Yes, it's important to have sources on the ground who can give you first-hand testimony of what it was like during the years of those dictatorships. And I had that in places like Congo, people very close to Mobutu when he was in power. And the deputy, in fact, of Isaias Afwerki, who's the dictator in Eritrea, who came to see me in London and who I got some fantastic original information from. The problem, of course, is that a lot of these individuals, if they were close enough to the dictator, are themselves somehow usually culpable. They've been responsible for some kind of wrongdoing and may distort history in order to try to cover that up. And so part of this is having an instinct to be able to wrestle the truth from fiction. But it's also important, I think, to get on the ground in these countries and talk to people who are normal, law-abiding folk and hear their testimonies, because they've got nothing to hide, and sometimes they provide you with a deeper truth, if you like, about what it was like firsthand just living under that dictator. Joseph Kony is, of course, an unusual case because he's a rebel leader rather than a dictator. Somebody sought for many years by law enforcement agencies around the world, and effectively he's now neutered. So it's had the right impact on him. He now lives in some jungle hideout with a couple of dozen followers, so he's not really causing any trouble anymore. One of the problems is that African states tend not to put too much respect on the ICC, which means that not many African leaders have been taken there. Omar al-Bashir, who is the dictator of Sudan, or was, is somebody who's been pursued for years for genocide by the ICC. Only just in recent weeks have the Sudanese agreed to send him. They haven't done so yet, but say they will. No, most dictators in Africa end up with their reign coming to an end in the middle of the night in a hail of bullets. That happened an awful lot in Nigeria over the years. And the others tend to go quietly, passing on their wealth to future generations. Yes, indeed, for Europe and America. I like this question very much because there is a cautionary tale. Of course, circumstances are entirely different. Africa at the time that I write about was a power vacuum during and after decolonisation. But there are certain things that we can pick out that happened there that perhaps is happening in a far quieter way here in the West. Things like the gradual shutdown of any opposition of the media, the cronyism, the acceptance of corruption, the bringing into power of close relatives and very close friends, the dismissal of experts who we normally take seriously, certainly in the time of such a pandemic. And we can see that obviously with Trump, but we can also see it perhaps in places like Hungary, the lurch to the right that we've seen there and the gradual erosion of democracy. And of course, most of all, in Europe, if you include within geographical Europe Russia, we see it with Putin. Yes, indeed, there was no history of democracy in many of these African states. And prior to colonisation, local troubles had been sorted out by tribal chiefs. And they sorted things out for favours, for cattle, for women, for slaves. This was something that had worked well for many centuries before we were there. And some of those people would still prefer there to be a strong man, tribal style leader. They would call it a paramount chief, somebody who's in control of a huge area. And Mobutu played up to this, and so did Mugabe. And one of the problems with it is, of course, that they will favour a particular ethnicity or a particular religion, a particular tribe that they were part of, and they will subjugate the rest. And so when you put that into an electoral situation, all that happens is that the distances between rivals, traditional rivals, are so vast, there's very little room for compromise, for coalition. So you end up oscillating between extremes. One party comes in, which favours one particular tribe, and then it swings right over to the other side, which is why, of course, one-party states, single-party states, such as the one they had in Côte d'Ivoire for a long time, actually work, because they become a kind of internal coalition where they're looking for peace. They're looking to bring everybody together in one unified system. And actually, the enemy to that situation is to have regular elections, because that is when trouble breaks out.